Hello. Today I'm going to be discussing how to identify the sampling strategy in an academic peer-reviewed journal article. So Maxfield and Babby talk about two families of sampling strategies: probability sampling strategies and non-probability sampling strategies. And remember, probability sampling is done if we have a sampling frame that we can use to draw a sample from, and also if the goal of our research is to draw a small sample and then generalize up to a target population. So if we have, for example, we're trying to do a survey, let's say, of the entire university population, rather than talk to the entire population of the university, we might draw a sample of students and then use the findings from that sample to generalize up to the target population. Non-probability sampling techniques are used when we don't have a sampling frame or when we don't care about generalizing to a larger population. So again, if you want a refresher on this, I suggest checking out Chapter 8 in Maxfield and Babby. But again, just keep in mind that there's probability sampling techniques and non-probability sampling techniques. And when we're talking about probability sampling, there are at least 6 probability sampling techniques that are discussed in Maxfield and Babby. So there are simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, disproportionate stratified sampling, multi-stage cluster sampling, and multi-stage cluster sampling with stratification. When we talk about non-probability, there are 4 basic techniques. There is purposive or judgment sampling, quota sampling, reliance on available subject sampling, and snowball sampling. So when you read an academic journal article, one thing that you'll want to do is identify the type of sampling that the researchers used. And the first decision point is, did they use a probability technique or a non-probability technique? The second decision point is, once you know whether it was probability or non-probability, what specific technique did they use? And sometimes this is easy to figure out. Sometimes they mention it in the abstract. Other times you'll have to get a bit more creative and dig deep into the methods section of the article itself. So I have here once again the Baker and Wolfer crime triangle article. Let's go ahead and take a look at it now and see if we can identify the type of sampling strategy that they used. To save you some trouble and time, I've already reviewed the article, and I know that they do not mention the sampling strategy in the abstract. But I'll tell you now that that is the first place that you probably want to look, is in the abstract, to see if they talk about the type of sampling that they did. However, in this particular case, I've already read the abstract. They don't talk about the sampling strategy in the abstract, which is not a problem. You know, some journals don't require it, and some journals maybe make them include certain things in the abstract or exclude certain things. So regardless, it's not in the abstract. So we're going to go down to the methods section and see if we can find any clues. So here's the methods section of the article. And if we go down a little bit, they talk about how they collected the data. So Neighborhood Watch volunteers trained in survey and interview techniques administered surveys in 2 waves, one prior to community-oriented policing in 1996. This was the pre-assessment, and one 6 months after it was implemented in 1998. This was the post-assessment. Okay. Each wave involves surveys of 2 random samples of people. The first sample of each wave consists of community members who live in the immediate vicinity of a local park, an elderly apartment complex, and about 48 surrounding homes dominate this area around the park. Okay. Read a little bit more. Since the focus of the community-oriented policing crime study was a park, a relatively small geographical area, the police sponsoring the study were interested in trying to study the entire population in this area. Okay, So it sounds like they actually attempted to do a census of people in this target population that was near the park. So this is a little bit different in the sense that they did not use a probability or non-probability sampling technique here. Rather, they just tried to get a census of all the folks that were located in this particular area. So that's fine. We can just talk about the fact that they took a census of the target population. But let's go and see if we can find any more information specifically about this second wave. The second sample in each wave focuses on people who live in the general borough population and have access to the park, but do not live in its immediate vicinity. Since this is a much broader base, the intent was to sample 10% of the total borough population, which numbers approximately 5,590 people according to the 1990 census, the most recent data available for borough count. The sampling technique for the general borough population was simple random sampling using the area phone book. The area is not yet computerized in terms of county and resident information, and parceling out the relevant areas not near the park so to not resample the park group. For the study, 559 people from the borough were the target sample size. However, due to refusal, the study yielded a total elderly and non-elderly response rate of approximately 60% of the desired size for each wave. Okay. So basically, it sounds like for this second sample, they used simple random sampling. And simple random sampling, as you'll recall, was a probability sampling technique. And they say here that they were interested in drawing 10% of this total borough population. So they used probability sampling to draw a sample that was 10% of the borough population, and then they were going to use this sample to speak for the borough at large. So clearly, again, even though they don't explicitly say that they were using probability sampling, it sounds like they were. And then they say here, the sampling technique for the general borough population was simple random sampling using the area phone book. Okay, so again, simple random sampling is a probability sampling technique. So we can say that they used probability sampling here and simple random sampling. And then we can say that for the first sample they took, they actually did a census, and they sampled people that were living near the park. Because remember, the whole point of this study was they were going to do problem-oriented policing and community-oriented policing at this park and see if it reduced crime and also the fear of crime of the community that lived in the vicinity of the park. So they had their treatment group, which is folks living near the park. They took a census of this group, and then they had their control or comparison group, which is people that lived away from the park. And here they used a probability sampling technique, specifically simple random sampling, to draw 10% of this population to then speak for the broader target population. So that's pretty much it. Again, in identifying the sampling strategy, first thing that you'll want to do is check out the abstract and see if they mention it. In this particular case, they did not, so we had to go into the methods and read a little bit deeper to understand the sampling strategy that the researchers used in their study. So that pretty much wraps it up for identifying the sampling strategy. If you have any questions about this, please reach out to me either via email or Canvas, or you can leave a comment here and I would be happy to address it.